Hello, so up for another resume review today. Today we're looking at Amanda. So, BI manager, let's see. Okay, first thing I noticed with the profile section is that the content here seems to be quite generic. My commitment to leveraging data for strategic decision making aligns perfectly with your team's goals. It's very generic and probably isn't something that actually shows what you can bring to an organization. I would typically advise to put metrics where possible in your profile section because that helps to, at the very least, show why you are uniquely positioned to to be considered for that position or to be seen as the right fit for an organization. So, whilst you say things like you thrive in a collaborative environment, maybe you should say something that actually speaks more to that from a metrics perspective. Otherwise, this will just get completely ignored. The other the other two big issues that I've noticed as well is, so you have your skills section here, which is a list of your skills and the technologies that you're familiar with, as well as your education, which is fine. However, the order doesn't seem to make sense. For example, it looks like you have north of about 17 years experience, it seems to be. And so having your skills and your education before your experience is the wrong way around. Your experience is the best part that you have to offer, and so therefore it should go first, whilst your education and skills can come after. I would actually argue that skills would actually go before education as well. So it would be work experience, then skills, then education. Especially given that it was a very long time ago. So focus on that in that particular order. What else comes to mind for me? I do think the way that you've structured your work experience is a little bit strange. And I only say this from the perspective of hiring managers and recruiters who are hiring globally, assuming that you are applying for remote positions. They would typically be looking at, whilst yes, you do have the name of the company and the role you did and the time, you don't need to preface it with role. There's no need to preface it with role. Whoops, turn that up. Yeah, there's no need to preface it with role. You just need to show this is the role that you had. So BI manager or business intelligence manager, whatever the official title is. And then yes, the date you started and when you left, and then the name of the company. So you don't need to preface it with numbers either. Just company, the role, the date, and then what you did, or rather not what you did, but the impact of what you did. So you mentioned here that you've led data-driven strategies that boosted revenue by 30% annually, and again here, so you've got two bullet points that does have like numbers in it, which is good. I think that you should order your bullet points by most impactful to least impactful. And then I would also limit this to no more than 3 or 4 bullets per role. Otherwise, your resume ends up becoming quite lengthy. So for each role, you have about 6 or 7 in most cases, whereas some you only have 4, some you only have 1. I mean, it makes sense for your older roles to only have 1 bullet point, but for your newer roles, I would keep it to 3 or 4 max for sure. And then make sure that you bold the important points, especially those that tie in greatly to revenue. And this also comes in mind with when I speak to the audience too. So you mentioned that you've led BI projects that resulted in a 20% increase in revenue. So my question would be, if I was a recruiter in this particular example, is why is this mentioned at the bottom? This should be mentioned at the top because this is the most important one. This is the most important metric, followed by this one. And then for the others, it's like this speaks more to your day-to-day job and what you kind of do day-to-day, which really isn't that important. But if you can add some kind of metric to back it up, then I think it would look much more attractive. That is at a high level. Other things that I'm thinking of when looking at your resume, the things that I would say probably does work is you showing, hey, this is the role that you either have or the role that you want. I do like the fact that your skills list is concrete and is very tool specific, which is a good start. Rather than filling it with soft skills like a lot of people do. So I'm glad that everything does seem to be a real life skill, a real tangible professional skill rather than a fluffy skill, so to speak. But yeah, just wanting to reiterate again about the metrics. So the other thing that I would mention is that for your metrics, it would be great to show what the revenues were before and after. So you said that you boosted revenue by 30% annually. As a hiring manager looking at this for the first time, I would probably be a little suspicious, because this comes with the assumption that every year your activities is the sole reason why the company is growing by 30% year over year, which does seem a bit extreme. And so I would just be curious as to how realistic this actually is. And so I'd be curious to see, okay, what was the revenue before and what was the revenue now? And rather than even doing it by 30% annually, stretch it across the 4 years and show what that revenue was before and after. And you can use rough estimates as well. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't need to put exact financial information from the company that you worked at, obviously, but without mentioning the before and after, I think would be helpful. So yeah, saying what it was from X to Y in terms of how you managed to improve that. The other thing I want to mention as well is about bolding. So just making sure that the impact metrics are bolded where possible. And again, the ordering once more. Let's see. I guess because we're doing a review, clearly the country isn't listed here which makes sense. But as you're applying for roles, it would be useful for you to include the country where you're based in your header section, so that people know when you are applying for roles, they know whether you're actually eligible for the position based on the location. Let's say if the company says that they are hiring in EMEA and you're not based in EMEA, then they might not know that, and so you would get rejected despite maybe being based there. So include that there, and the same would apply if you're based in Americas or based in APAC as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think if you make those changes, then this resume should actually be very good to, at the very least, be in the same grouping as those applicants who are also applying for similar positions to you. The changes that I'm recommending won't necessarily give you like a massive advantage, but it will definitely put you on par with who you're competing with for these types of roles, especially if it is a remote role. On that front. But yeah, let me know if that helps, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.